Here we go. Oh. Oh. Man. There goes the carbon fiber again. All that work. Lousy 140 miles an hour. 2,726 feet. She was hauling till she hit that tree. I don't know whether I hit. It's all fixable. Again. It's actually not as bad as I thought she was going to be. Alright guys, I'm going to give you a quick rundown on how I'm going to fix this body up. Any of the loose whiteness where the clear or the epoxy popped away like that, and this crack, I'm going to kind of grind it smooth through here best I can. Grind that crack out anywhere where the body is. Like you can see, this was the old crack from the curb here, and this is a new one from the newest damages. That was there and re-broke open. And then we also have this new one here in the back, so that's kind of weak back there. And I'll probably just go over a whole nother coat of epoxy with it, go over top of it, and yeah, we'll go from here. Get her fixed back up again. So I'm going to use this, and not at a fast speed, just have it set to 4, and just kind of grind away. And I'm barely touching this. I'm just basically letting the wheel glide on top of it. Just more or less trying to scratch the surface. Kind of grind down any high spots. And you can see she's pretty flimsy right now. Moves around quite a bit. She took a pretty good hit, so I'm going to work on it some more, and then I'll catch you guys down in the lab. So guys, here we are. I like to use this stuff I got off Amazon. Venom Carbon, that's the company that it's from. 2 parts resin, 1 part hardener. So I got my scale here, and just a little thing I like to use. Actually, I think it was from Traxxas parts, but I like this kit. You can get it at Home Depot. It's a little, comes with these little rollers. You can buy these ones afterward, but comes with these rollers, this little tray, paint tray, and one of these for later on, or if you're doing a whole coat, which I will be getting to. But for right now, I'm only going to be using, you can buy a pack of these for at Walmart cheap. Just going to be using these to dab up where I need to be going. So where I'm going to be laying, you can see the pieces that I've already laid in here, and I'm basically just going to be supporting everything that was cracked or damaged or anything like that, and laying a new piece in, and then going back over the whole outside once again. So here we go with the outside. It's after, this is what it looks like after it's all ground out. So you want to try and keep your cracks even, if you guys can see that, and grind out any looseness. So anything, unless it's porous, I mean, there's places in this body where there's some holes, like it's not completely sealed off. So that's a patch from the crash also. I'd have to say this whole corner that I've repaired from before worked out pretty well. So that got a little thin right here. I got to re-support the back side of that also, just to kind of keep presentability, because this is what happens when you go on top and it looks like crap. So yeah, I'm just going to go from here. There's the crack in the back. So just going to work from the underside and then do my final layers on top with epoxy, and that is when I'm going to be using a roller. So stick around. All right, so I'm going to start with the resin. 2 parts of this. And 6, 7. Trying to even it out. I'm not very good at math. Come on, give me 8. It's been a while. This is probably a more inaccurate way of doing it, but this is the way I do it, so it works. 8. It's always handy to have some paper towels around. I like to keep these separate from each other. I don't like to put these in the same bag or anything like that, because the chemical reaction between the hardener and the epoxy is just so... or 4.5. Sorry, 4.5. So we gotta go up to 4.5. About that. And then thoroughly mix it. Alright guys, so we're all mixed up. And basically you take your time. I mean, it takes about 5 minutes to mix it up. And you don't have to really rush. It's no pressure mixing it up. I mean, and then you're just going to dab it on. Get it all nice and wet where you are going to be putting your repairs. And what this is going to do is, this is a tack coat. And this is going to tack up, and you're going to let it sit for about, I'd say about 45 minutes almost. It depends on your mixture. It depends on how accurately you mix the resins. And you're just going to put a nice, something that to give the carbon fiber to bond to, like to adhere to, because it will not hold shape at all by just laying it on top. So by no means in any way, shape, or form will it hold any sort of shape, which I figured out the hard way. And where your repair is going to be, you just get it all in there where you're going to lay it, and then go from there. One thing you will be surprised about is just by putting a coat of epoxy into whatever is loosened up, stiffened it up a great amount. The first time I fixed this body, I didn't even know where to begin. I'm a self-taught. I mean, other than YouTube videos that you can find on YouTube on how to do carbon fiber, basically I'm learning as I go and just working with it more and more every day. Well, every time I do a project. And I didn't know where to start, so I just said, you know what, the heck with it. I'm just going to coat the whole body and get it back to being stiff again, you know, as stiff as it was originally. And yeah, so I put a whole layer on it, and I was like, wow, after it dried up, I mean, tomorrow morning this will be nice and set up. So I mean, in about an hour, I'm going to start laying my pieces, and you know, just cuts that I have left over from doing this body originally, and just cut out pieces that you need, sections that you need, and then just lay them wherever you'd like to lay them and go from there. But yeah, it's pretty fun. I mean, if anybody in the comments, if I see I'm doing something wrong or has a way of helping or a better way of doing it, I'm definitely down for it. I'm not a professional at this by no means. So like I said, I'm just showing y'all how I do it and how I fixed it before. And this repair held up. I mean, this repair held up really, really well. So so far, so good. Alright guys, so we have the tack coat. It's been about 45 minutes. I want to start cutting my pieces. I got pieces laying all over the place now, and I got my box of spare remnants that I have to the side, but I already have some laid out here, and I want to start getting them kind of laid in. The tack coat trick is when you touch the resin and it doesn't come off on your finger, but it's still wet, that's when you want to start applying it. When it's just starting to cure just enough so where it still has something to soak into the carbon fiber. So I want to do these in little thin sections because I want to try and keep them as thin as possible, being that there's limited space above where the tire is. So I got to try and keep it uniform as much as possible. These are Milwaukee scissors I got from Home Depot. They're like 19 bucks, but they were totally worth it for cutting carbon fiber. You cannot cut this stuff with regular old scissors. It just doesn't work. And I found that you cut your piece and get it right on, because this stuff will fall apart. And like this yellow strand is holding all these fibers together, and that blue tape is holding them together. But as soon as I cut it off, it's going to start falling apart. So if I cut it, I get it right on there, and then it'll hold its shape. So start. put the cleanest side of the edge to the outside, and you want to try and bunch the fibers together. All the little fibers, you want to try and bunch them up as tight as possible when you're laying it. And kind of press it together, and you'll see it's starting to fall apart already, but you just kind of work it in there and let the tack coat grab it. Yes, you're going to get it all over the place. And for those who are wondering, there's zero smell to the resin. I mean, there's a little bit, tiny bit, but nothing. Like, I've done this in my kitchen before because I had to, and I didn't really have a choice. But always keep a pair of tweezers handy for those little misfit pieces that just don't want to cooperate, that you don't really want in. So I like to use the back side, kind of tuck it in where I want it. So that is going to reinforce this. And after I get all these pieces laid in, I'm going to go back and put another coat on and then go from there. Alright guys, so I'm going to let this tack up a little more. And this corner that was busted off where this hole is, I hand laid some strands across there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up some more resin. And then I'm going to just basically fill that in and get some resin mixed into it, fill it in with a bunch of little pieces, and build that corner up right there. So, and we'll see what happens. And I mean, there's really no right or wrong way. I mean, if something goes wrong with this part, you know, if it doesn't dry right, or if it doesn't stick right, or it pops up where you don't want it, all you gotta do is go back to that cut-off wheel that I was using to grind out the cracks, grind out what you don't like, grind it all smooth. If you don't like how something's sitting, or if it's, say, protruding where you know your tire's gonna be, you can just grind it back out. And then if you want to reinforce it with a smooth piece, go for it. It's just what I've been doing, and so far it's been working. I mean, and every single one of these that you crisscross the pattern on, I was told by a very wise man that every, you know, when you crisscross these patterns, the more you lay them. I made a mistake by not paying attention to how I laid them on the first attempt that I ever did. When I laid them both in the same direction as far as this grain goes. And if you actually crisscross them and lay them opposite of each other, it'll structurally help the integrity of the flexibility of the body. So I was only working with 2 layers, so it was rather thin and slightly flexible. But like I said, the more I fix it, the more grams of epoxy you're adding to it every single time. It's going to get a little bit heavier and a little bit heavier every single time. But however, it started out literally half the weight of an actual plastic body. So that being said, it's still coming in much lighter than an actual plastic body, if anybody is wondering. So, all right, guys. So we got it all mixed up again. One thing to note, I did a bad thing, which was when I wiped those jugs off after I poured the resin in, I kind of used the same rag. I tend to not do that, because if you get the epoxy on the rag and then wipe the hardener bottle off, that chemical reaction will cause this stuff to somewhat start to harden up. And I've noticed in the past, in previous accidents, that it causes you problems. So don't do that. Just use a separate rag or a different portion of the rag when you're wiping the lid off, or wiping the end of the bottle off, and then go from there. But we're all mixed up, and once again, we got our fibers laid in there. And we're just going to dab it on there. We're just going to lay it on there and get all that fresh carbon fiber nice and wet, and let it soak into it. Let it absorb it like a sponge. But try not to wipe towards the edges. You want to try and pat it and roll it and come off of it somewhat evenly, because you will pull those fibers. You will definitely pull them apart. You will separate them. And the more you do that, the more it's just not going to be the way you want it to. So you want to kind of be as gentle as possible. And once again, like I said, if it dries and you got a portion of it that sticks up, you just grind it off and start over again. As far as the quantity of epoxy I've been using, it basically, I am using it as So my first mix, I mixed 9 grams of the epoxy, and then I mixed in 4.5 grams of the hardener. By doing that, that gave me a baseline. I hit all my spots for my tack coat, and it basically barely covered it. So what you want to do with when you're coating the carbon fiber itself, you want to have a little bit extra, a little more, because it's going to soak it up. You want it to soak it up. You want a little extra in it, and you know, not so much that it's pouring out and globbing all over the place, but you want a little bit more to kind of be a little more generous with it. And you know, the epoxy is the reinforcement to the carbon, so keep that in mind when you're doing it. These hand laid strands are, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I'm going to give it a go and see what happens. And as this is drying, as this is curing, you can wait about 45 minutes. Crap. You can wait about 45 minutes and come back to it. And when you come back to it, you can kind of get to the point where the epoxy is just starting to tack up. It's just starting to get hard. And if you keep an eye on it, if you babysit, if you have the time, you know, go out, take a break, relax, play with the kids, do whatever you do, and then come back to it about 45 minutes. If something's not sticking up, if you catch it when the epoxy is starting to harden, you can most likely press it into place and get it to form the way you want it to be. And sometimes just babysitting it really helps out a lot. So you can just kind of press the fibers as it's hardening, because it's not like an instant harden. It's a gradual over time harden. So this will sit overnight like this, and then depending on how many coats you want to put on it, I may put 2 coats on it, but it depends on how it hardens up. I just pay attention to how it hardens up, and if it hardens up nicely for me, then I leave it alone. You know, I mean, this stuff can get pretty pricey, so I'm not trying to go and waste material that I don't need to waste, but at the same time, you want material on there that you're going to be able to functionally use. So still have quite a bit left over. Still have this back section. Just going to get it nice and wet back here. And you evenly apply it as much as possible. Now, if you're doing a face coat, something on the face, if you're doing the actual original body, that's why I use a roller, because it evenly distributes the epoxy over the whole project. And what I mean, once it dries, you'd be amazed. It dries to whatever it's on top of. So whatever pattern or whatever you're looking at as far as, you know, what you're putting the epoxy onto, you basically are it's gonna dry in that. It's gonna dry exactly the way it lays. So my SD card is full. If you're gonna come back to it later on, babysit it, make sure your stuff is where you want it, how you want it. And then what I'm going to do with the rest of this epoxy is I'm also going to go to the outside of this body, and I'm going to put some on the outside. So the reason I left the wings on this time, because it's not really too crazy as far as structurally, the damage isn't as bad as the curb. The curb was pretty darn wicked. So because of that, there was a lot of structural damage. I actually wound up putting it back onto the body that I originally made it out of, and to kind of hold its form in a sense, because it was pretty bad. So I'm just going to finish up putting some of this on the outside and dressing it up a little bit and go from there.
All right, y'all, I love carbon fiber for this reason, because now she's all back to normal. I'm going to do a little bit more filling in here and some trimming up, but all the places where I ground down, as you can see, are all filled in with epoxy now. That's an old crack from the curb, and she's all back to being stiff. No more flexy. See, it's not flexing at all. So check out the back. So, and all we did was layer this in here, this piece in here, recoat a lot of what I had left over, and did some recoating in here, made this piece in here. And this is what I mean. Last night, if I would have babysat this a little bit more last night, I could have gotten this tight, but it's kind of like a spot where what I can do is fill this with epoxy now that it's all hard and laid in where I want it. But for the most part, both pieces came out really well. I can trim a little bit of that down on the inside here, but put this piece in here, it's all nice and stiff. And even though this is just a bunch of little strands, I did wind up cutting a little section out for this part right here. But yeah, I'm just gonna fill this in on the outside, this little gap here. Gonna fill that in a little bit more with some pieces, and then put some more epoxy over it, and then we'll go from there. But she's back to normal, so stiff again. So I love it. This is the benefit of carbon fiber. Catch you on the next one. Peace.